It was a cold December evening when my world began to crumble, not because of the chill outside, but because of the bitter cold I felt from the very people who were supposed to love me the most. My 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was lying unconscious in a hospital bed after a sudden, terrifying medical emergency. The doctor said she needed surgery, immediately. I was alone, panicked, and desperate for help. With trembling hands, I did what any son would do. I called my parents. I didn't expect a celebration on the other end of the line, but I also didn't expect to hear music, laughter, and the unmistakable clink of glasses. My mom answered. Her voice was upbeat, almost giddy, like nothing in the world could possibly go wrong that night. I told her what was happening, that Lily needed surgery, that I had no one else to watch over her before they took her in. Her laughter faded. She got quiet. Then, coldly, she said, "We already have plans. We're going to your brother's Christmas party. We can't just drop everything for every little thing that happens in your life." I stood there in the hospital hallway, trying to make sense of her words. I reminded her that Lily was her granddaughter, that I'd been supporting them financially for years since my wife died, covering bills, groceries, even their vacation last summer. She sighed and said, "You're always needing something. You're becoming a burden." Then she hung up. A burden. After everything. I stared at my phone in disbelief, like I'd just been told the weather was nice outside while my world was on fire. I wasn't angry yet. I was numb. It wasn't until I called 3 close friends, people who had no obligation to me, but showed up in minutes, that the weight of it all hit me. My own parents couldn't be bothered. But my friends, they didn't hesitate. While Lily was being prepped for surgery, I made a decision that night. One that took years of guilt and quietly crushed it in a single moment of clarity. I was done. Done with being used, done with pretending family meant loyalty, and done funding the comfort of people who only saw me as a nuisance. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just blocked their numbers, canceled every payment I was making for them, and walked away. 2 weeks passed. Lily's recovery was slow but steady. We were finally smiling again. Then, one evening, just as I was about to put her to bed, I heard a knock on the front door. It was late. Too late for visitors. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart raced. I picked Lily up gently and carried her to her room. Then I walked back to the door and opened it. And there they were. It was my parents. They stood there on my porch like nothing had happened. My dad was holding a small gift bag, like this was just a normal visit. My mom gave me a forced smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't say a word. I just stared at them, stunned. After everything they said, after leaving me alone when my daughter was fighting for her life, they had the nerve to show up at my door? "Can we come in?" my mom asked softly, as if she were asking to borrow sugar. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly and said, "We heard about Lily. We're glad she's doing better." There was no emotion in his voice. No regret. Just flat words, like he was reading from a script. I wanted to yell. I wanted to ask them where they were when I was crying alone in the hospital hallway. But instead, I just let the silence speak for me. And that silence must have said enough, because my mom looked away, suddenly very interested in the ground. "We didn't come to fight," she muttered. "We just thought, maybe we could talk. Maybe we could start over." Start over? After calling me a burden? After abandoning my daughter? But I didn't slam the door. I should have. A part of me wanted to. But another part of me, a smaller, more tired part, was curious. Why now? Why show up 2 weeks later, unannounced, when they hadn't called, messaged, or asked about Lily since that night? I stepped outside and pulled the door halfway closed behind me. I wasn't letting them in. Not yet. "You left me alone," I said quietly. "You knew she was in surgery. And you still chose a party." My mom's eyes welled up, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or just her way of trying to control the situation. "We didn't know it was that serious," she said. "We thought you were overreacting again. You always get dramatic when things happen." There it was. The same old excuse. The same gaslighting I'd grown up with. The same dismissal of anything I ever felt. Suddenly, everything from my childhood came rushing back. The missed birthdays, the broken promises, the way they always put my brother first. This wasn't new. This was just another chapter in a long, painful story. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "So why now? Why are you really here?" They looked at each other, like they'd practiced this. My dad finally spoke. "Your brother's in some financial trouble. We thought, maybe you could help. Just until he gets back on his feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They didn't come because they missed us. They didn't come because they felt bad. They came because they wanted something. Again. I felt my jaw tighten. The wind was cold now, biting at my face, but all I felt was heat rising in my chest. I kept my voice steady. "You came for money." My mom didn't deny it. She just looked away again. And in that moment I knew this wasn't over. I stared at them, almost wishing I had misheard. But the silence that followed confirmed everything. They weren't here because they cared. They were here because they needed something, again. My brother, the golden child who could do no wrong, had somehow messed things up, and now they were hoping I'd bail him out. The same brother they canceled Christmases for, the same one they chose to celebrate with while my daughter was in surgery. I looked at the gift bag in my dad's hand and realized it wasn't for Lily. It was for me. A weak attempt to soften the blow, to sugarcoat the real reason they were standing on my porch. "He's just made a few bad decisions," my mom said carefully, like she was walking on glass. "He was laid off. He's struggling to keep up with bills. The kids haven't had a proper holiday." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how familiar it all felt. When I lost my wife, I didn't get a visit. I didn't get sympathy. I got a text that said, "Let us know when things settle down." And when I started supporting them financially, without ever being asked to, I did it because I thought maybe it would bring us closer. I thought maybe they'd finally see me. But all I was to them was a safety net. "I'm not helping him," I said flatly. "He has you. Let him lean on you." My dad's face changed, hardening into something colder. "We thought you'd at least care about your nieces and nephews. They didn't do anything wrong." Neither did Lily. But no one showed up for her. The hypocrisy was exhausting. It was like watching the same scene play over and over again, just with different words. My mom reached out to touch my arm, and I pulled back. "You said I was a burden," I reminded her. "You said I'm always needing something. Well, now I don't. And suddenly you're the ones knocking." She blinked like she was about to cry, but again, I couldn't tell if it was real or just another act. The thing is, growing up in a house where love had conditions teaches you to question every display of emotion. You start wondering if the tears are for you, or for them. They didn't apologize. Not once. Instead, my dad sighed and said, "Well, we tried. You'll regret this one day." That was the last thing he said before they turned and walked down the steps. I watched them go, the gift bag still dangling in his hand like some twisted symbol of guilt wrapped in holiday paper. The street was quiet, too quiet. But inside my chest, everything was loud. My thoughts, my anger, the aching reminder that no matter how much you give, some people will always want more. And that's when I saw it, something small and folded, left on the porch step near the door. A piece of paper. I picked it up. My brother's handwriting. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about abandonment anymore. It was something deeper. Something I hadn't seen coming. The paper was creased, like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. My hands shook as I opened it. At first glance, it looked like a note, short and rushed, like it had been written in a hurry. But as I read, the pit in my stomach deepened. Didn't want to say it in front of them. I messed up. Bad. Not just money. There's more. I'm being watched. I think they're in danger too. I didn't know who else to turn to. I'm sorry. No signature. Just my brother's handwriting, sharp, messy, familiar. I read the note 3 times before I finally looked up, scanning the street. Empty. No cars. No figures. Just the soft buzz of a street lamp and the wind brushing through bare trees. Danger? Who was in danger? And what did he mean by being watched? I felt my pulse climb, quick and unsteady. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just another reckless financial mistake. There was something bigger, something darker lurking behind their visit. I walked back inside, locking the door behind me, my mind racing. Lily was asleep down the hall, safe for now. But suddenly, even our quiet little home didn't feel safe anymore. I felt exposed, like eyes could be on us right now. I thought of the knock, the visit, the strange timing. Why come now, after weeks of silence? Had they really come just for money, or were they trying to warn me in their own twisted way? The note stayed clenched in my hand, now damp with sweat. Every sound outside felt louder, closer. And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. Even after making sure all the doors and windows were locked, even after checking on Lily 3 times, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, gripping that note like it could somehow give me answers if I held it long enough. My brother wasn't the type to be paranoid. Reckless, yes. Irresponsible, definitely. But never scared. And this note, it wasn't just guilt. It was fear. Real fear. By morning, I was still unsettled. Lily was her usual cheerful self, unaware of everything. I didn't want to scare her, so I smiled, made her breakfast, and acted like everything was fine. But the moment I heard the mailbox clatter outside, my chest tightened again. I waited, then stepped outside. Just regular mail, bills, ads, a couple of holiday cards. And then I saw it. An envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name in black marker. I opened it right there on the porch. Inside was a photo, blurry, taken from a distance. It was me and Lily. At the hospital. I was sitting on the bench outside the emergency room, holding her hand while she slept in the wheelchair. The angle was wrong for it to have come from hospital security. This wasn't official. Someone had been watching us. My hands went cold. I looked around the street again. Nothing unusual. Just cars parked, a neighbor walking his dog. But suddenly, everything felt suspicious. I rushed inside and shut the door, locking it tight. This wasn't just about my parents anymore. Or even my brother. Someone was involved in something serious. And now Lily and I were part of it. I pulled out the note again, reading it for clues. "They're in danger too," he wrote. Did he mean our parents? Was that why they showed up so unexpectedly? But they hadn't seemed scared. They seemed more concerned about money. Unless they knew but didn't want to say it outright. I thought back to the night at the hospital. Was anyone acting strange? I remembered a man in the waiting room, sitting alone, never talking to anyone. I had assumed he was just another worried parent. But now I wasn't so sure. I picked up my phone and called my brother. No answer. Straight to voicemail. Then I called a mutual friend we hadn't spoken to in a while. He used to work with my brother years ago, before he started getting involved in shady side jobs. When I asked if he'd heard from him, there was a long pause on the line. "You haven't talked to him yet?" he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "He was supposed to lay low. He said he'd be staying with someone he trusted. But he never told me who. Look, man, I don't know what he did, but people are looking for him. The kind you don't want showing up at your door." I froze. Then, just as I was about to ask more, there was another knock at the door. This time, it was loud. Heavier. Not like family. Not like a friend. The knocking didn't stop. 3 heavy thuds. A pause. Then 3 more. Not frantic. Not rushed. Just firm, like whoever was out there already knew I'd open the door. I stood completely still, my phone still pressed to my ear. The call had disconnected. I didn't remember hanging up. I grabbed Lily's backpack from the hook by the door, quietly walked down the hallway, and scooped her up from where she was coloring on the living room rug. "Daddy?" she whispered, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Sure," I whispered back, carrying her to the back door. I slid it open slowly, heart pounding. I had to get her out of the house. I couldn't risk her safety, not for anything. But just as I stepped out onto the porch, I heard a voice from the front. "Please. It's me." I froze. It was my brother. I peeked around the corner and saw him, disheveled, panicked, and looking over his shoulder every few seconds. I locked eyes with him and stepped forward, still holding Lily close. "What's going on?" I hissed. "What did you do?" He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "They're following me," he said. "Not the police. Worse. I was working for someone, moving cash under the table. I didn't know who it belonged to until it was too late." "And you brought that to my door?" I snapped. "My daughter lives here. I didn't mean to drag you into this," he said quickly, his voice trembling. "I just needed somewhere safe. I thought Mom and Dad might tell you something. I didn't expect them to ask for money." He looked down at Lily in my arms. "I'm sorry. I swear I never wanted her involved. But they're watching everything. Phones, cars, everything." Before I could respond, headlights swept across the yard. A black SUV pulled up slowly to the curb. No plates. My brother backed up, panicking. "They found me." I turned, opened the back door, and shoved Lily inside. "Go to your room, stay quiet," I told her. She nodded, eyes wide, and ran down the hallway. I turned back just as two men stepped out of the SUV, dressed in dark coats. They didn't say a word. They just started walking toward us. I had no weapons. No plan. Just adrenaline. My brother grabbed my arm. "They don't want you. Just let them take me." But I couldn't let that happen on my doorstep. Not in front of my child. Then, from behind us, floodlights flashed on. "Police! On the ground, now!" It all happened in seconds. My yard filled with officers. The two men froze, hands in the air. My brother dropped to his knees. I stood there, heart racing, trying to make sense of what just happened. Apparently my friend, the one I had called earlier, had tipped off the authorities. He'd been watching out for me. He knew things were getting dangerous and called it in. Later that night, after everything calmed down and Lily was finally asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, exhausted. I thought it was over. Until I opened my mailbox the next morning. Inside was another photo. But this time, it was just Lily. At school. Taken from behind a fence. My hands trembled as I held the photo. It wasn't blurry like the last one. It was clear, detailed. Lily in her blue backpack, walking just a few steps ahead of her teacher. The shot was taken from a distance, but whoever had done it had taken their time. This wasn't a threat, they wanted me to know they were still watching. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor just outside Lily's room, listening to her soft breathing, replaying every second of the last few days in my mind. I thought it would all end when the police stepped in. I thought handing over my brother would be enough. But I was wrong. Whatever he got himself into, it was deeper than I imagined. And even if those two men were taken in, someone else was still out there. The next morning, I made a decision. I filed for emergency relocation and went straight to the authorities with everything I had, the photos, the note, the full story. I didn't hold anything back. Not even the details that painted my family in a bad light. I wasn't protecting anyone anymore. Not after everything that had happened. I told them I feared for my daughter's life. That was the only truth that mattered. The following week was a blur of moving trucks, packed boxes, and quiet goodbyes to the few people I trusted. Lily didn't understand why we were leaving, but I told her it was a fresh start. Somewhere safer. Somewhere quiet. She smiled like kids do, trusting that I'd always keep her safe. And I would. No matter what. My brother was placed in protective custody. He finally came clean about the people he worked for, the stolen money, the names he dropped when things went bad. It wasn't just about him running from a debt. He had gotten involved with a network far bigger than he realized, and in the end, turning himself in was the only thing that kept him alive. I didn't speak to my parents again. Not because I hated them, but because I finally saw them clearly. They had their own choices to live with, and so did I. My loyalty nearly cost me everything. But I learned that family isn't about blood, it's about who stands by you when things fall apart. Lily and I eventually settled into our new home. It wasn't big, but it was peaceful. Every morning, I walked her to school, waited until she was inside, and watched the gates close. I stayed alert. I stayed ready. But after months passed and nothing happened, I finally started to breathe again. One night, while putting Lily to bed, she asked, "Are we safe now?" I looked at her and nodded. "Yeah, baby. We're safe." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. I lost a lot, my trust, my family, my sense of peace, but I held on to the one thing that mattered most. My daughter. And in protecting her, I finally found myself.